Well, thank you very much, and thank you very much for the invitation to talk. I'm Tony Wilkes. I'm a Senior Research Fellow here in the Anaesthetics Department at Cardiff University. And as part of my job, I'm also contracted through the university by SEN to act as a consultant on medical devices in the development of standards. I say thank you for the invitation. I feel a bit awkward about this because we've had the excitement of having the idea to start with, the excitement of having the development of the idea in industry, and now it's bump back down to earth, isn't it? The regulatory bit. What happens next? Thank you for staying on. The next step. Well, you've had the idea, and we've seen some ideas already this evening. And as Errol has been trying to stress to us in anaesthetics for a long time now, you've had the idea, protect it with your IP, the next stage. You've then developed your novel device, and you've got an industrial collaborator. You've demonstrated that the device does indeed work. Well, what happens next? You need to consider the European law, regulations and standards for your device that might be applicable. The law obviously is at the top, underpinned by the regulations. These are mandatory, of course, for all medical devices. Then underneath that, underpinning the regulations, are the standards for the devices, which are voluntary. And I think some people are surprised that the standards are actually voluntary. They're not mandatory for medical devices. And this is because you don't need to comply with standards to comply with the regulations. It's one route to complying with the regulations. These are all the public parts of it. There's also the private bit as well, which is the bit that's within the companies, their corporate specifications for the devices, professional good practice from the professional bodies as well. Those bits tend to be hidden a bit more, the other bits are public. So the European law part is there to protect the health and safety of the users, the consumers and the workers, protect property and the environment, and allow the free market of goods. And this is the key essential bit, that if you've got a device that you've made in the UK and it complies with the regulations, complies with the law in Europe, you can sell that device anywhere within Europe, and nobody is allowed to put in trade barriers in your way within Europe. Okay, so that's the law, underpinned, as I say, by the regulations. Or what are the regulations to do with medical devices? Well, to put your device on the market in the UK and then wider in Europe, because if you can put it on the market in the UK, it can be put on the market in Europe, you need to put the CE mark on your device. And I'm sure if you've been looking at medical devices at all, you've seen this on all medical devices. It's a demonstration that the device conforms with the essential requirements of the Medical Devices Directive. Now, I'm really going to be talking just about Europe for this talk. It's only a quarter of an hour. I haven't got time to go into the other regulatory systems elsewhere. But this is perhaps a good start. So these are new approach directives for the medical devices, and there are 3 relevant to medical devices in Europe. The first one that actually came into law in the UK in 1995 was the Active Implantable Medical Devices Directive, followed in 1998 by the more general Medical Devices Directive. There was then the third one for in vitro diagnostic medical devices, which came into force in 2003. So these have been around for a long time now, and I know a lot of you will have had experience with working with these. So underpinning those regulations then are the standards for medical devices. But as I say, these are voluntary for medical devices. So with these new approach directives, the way that these were implemented is that you have essential requirements in these directives which state a desired outcome without necessarily specifying how it should be achieved. Underpinning that then is the harmonised European standards which specify how you meet the essential requirements. The word harmonised there means that standards have been developed and have been accepted as by the European Commission as a way of meeting those essential requirements. So devices complying with the requirements of these standards are then presumed to conform with the essential requirements in the directive. And those devices can then carry the CE mark, and they can then be placed on the market anywhere in Europe. When the standards are developed in Europe, there's 3 European standards organisations who do that. The one that I do some work for is SEN, the European Committee for Standardisation. There's then CENELEC as well, which is the European Committee for Electrotechnical Standardisation, and ETSI, which is a name that I actually know nothing about because I work mainly with CEN and CENELEC, the European Telecommunications Standards Institute. We're really moving into a more global market. I'm sure I don't need to tell you that, and the standards are moving in the same way as well. So where standards are being developed in Europe, they take on board ISO standards, international standards, wherever possible. So the European standards are the same as the international standards. So for CEN, they work with ISO, the International Organisation for Standardisation, and for CENELEC, they work with IEC, the International Electrotechnical Commission. The standards themselves can be grouped into different levels. So you have horizontal standards at level 1, covering common requirements for all or a wide range of devices. So examples of those type of standards might be risk management, sterilisation and labelling requirements. You've then got your level 2 standards, which cover common requirements for a family of devices. Safety of medical electrical equipment, for example. And then you have the vertical standards, which cover requirements for a specific type of device. For example, ventilators, syringes and infusion pumps. So for any one device, more than one standard is likely to apply. But the beauty about European standards is that once one is published in one country, so once it's been published by, say, British standards, it then has to be adopted by every other country in Europe. So one European standard is equivalent to 30 national standards, giving a market of about 500 million people. I've been talking about medical devices, but what are they? Well, in the directive, there's a definition of what a medical device is, and this is the definition of it. And what's interesting here is it's not just the device itself, and you might be surprised to see that software is part of the medical device as well. If you're developing software for use in a medical device that you might not produce yourself, you're just using software, then according to the directive, that is a medical device. There's also what the purpose of the medical device is for, and the fact that it's not primarily a drug. Okay, so we're separating devices from drugs. I've been talking about essential requirements as well in the medical devices directives that the medical devices have to conform to. Here's just an example of one essential requirement from the directive. So the devices must achieve the performances intended by the manufacturer and be designed, manufactured and packaged in such a way they are suitable for one or more of the functions referred to in the definition of a medical device. So the device only has to do what the manufacturer says it does. It doesn't have to meet a particular level of performance or be effective in a particular area. It just has to do what the manufacturer says it does. Another essential requirement. Demonstration of conformity with the essential requirements must include a clinical evaluation. Well, that's an interesting one because I feel sometimes this is perhaps where collaboration between industry, academia and the NHS could be helpful. We could provide perhaps the clinical side of things to help you with meeting this particular essential requirement. How does this all work? How do you get the standards linking with the essential requirements? Well, this is taken from a particular standard. This is 1865, to do with patient handling equipment, particularly stretchers. So it's a vertical standard. This is the annex at the back showing the link between the clauses of the standard over here, so that if you meet the clauses in this particular standard, then you've met these essential requirements in the Medical Devices Directive. So conform with the standard, you meet those essential requirements. And my job is to ensure for a range of standards that that link can actually be made. And when you apply the Medical Devices Directive to your specific medical device, the first thing you need to do is find out what class of medical device it is, because the directive splits them into 4 different classes of device. So class 1, 2A, 2B and 3. And as we go down the list, you're increasing the risk to the patient from using that medical device. And if I put in some examples here, you can see how that works. So class 1 device example would be, say, a stethoscope, moving up to hearing aids, a ventilator, and then prosthetic heart valves, perhaps for class 3 device. When you come to do your conformity assessment, then for devices 2A and higher, you have to involve a notified body in your assessment. If for a class 1 device, that notified body is only involved if it's a sterile device or a device with a measuring function. Well, what's a notified body? It's an organisation accredited by a member state to approve products covered by the Medical Devices Directive, and these are some of the functions that a notified body might carry out. But really it's about auditing the quality system of the manufacturer. The extent of that assessment depends on the class of the device. So you're coming now to the final hurdle. You can prepare a technical file demonstrating compliance of the device with the relevant essential requirements of the directive. You can complete a declaration of conformity. You apply your CE mark to your new device. If you have a notified body, you need to put the number of the notified body in as well. And you can place your device on the market. Fantastic. So it might all seem to be rather a big hurdle, or even rather a series of hurdles to get over, to get your device on the market. But it can be done. Loads of experience with doing this. Medical devices get onto the market, as Kasem said, in 3 to 5 years to get through this process. Before the new approach directives came in, if you were a company in Germany trying to market in different countries, then there would be a problem in trying to get your device into these different markets. That's now gone. We're trying to create a level playing field for this for Europe. Perhaps that wasn't the case before. So now, because of European regulations, once you've got the CE mark on your device, you have access to the whole market in Europe, about 500 million people. And from that, perhaps you can extend that globally to the whole world. Thank you very much.